What was supposed to be another fiercely contested Sunday in Austria became headline news around the world before the first lap was even completed. A collision, a mistake, a retirement. Max Verstappen, the home favorite, was out of the race on the opening lap after an unexpected collision with none other than Mercedes rookie Kimi Antonelli. A crash that paralyzed the paddock. But what really happened? Who was at fault? In this video, you will understand all the details of the crash that shook up the Austrian GP. So, like it, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end to find out all the behind-the-scenes details of this crash. Right after the start at the Red Bull Ring, everything seemed to be going as normal. Verstappen held his position and defended himself aggressively, as usual. Antonelli, on the other hand, got off to a good start and dove inside at turn 3, one of the most treacherous on the Austrian circuit. But it was right there, at that point, that the chaos began. When trying to brake, the young Italian lost the rear of his car, as he himself explained later, and hit the left rear wheel of the number 1 Red Bull. The contact was direct, sharp, and immediate. Verstappen's car went up on the curb and suffered serious damage to the suspension. There was no time to react. Max was out. The safety car was immediately deployed, and race management began to review the incident. From the footage, it was clear that Antonelli had no ill intentions, in my opinion. It was simply a miscalculation and, perhaps, a bit of nervousness from the 18-year-old driver at a moment of maximum pressure. But the fact is that this error took the main name out of the race right at the beginning, and that, in any high-level sport, has consequences. In an interview with Sky Sports, Antonelli explained that it wasn't necessarily that I braked too late. It's that when I braked hard because I was behind other cars and, at that moment, the rear wheels locked. Because of that, I couldn't stop the car. Antonelli apologized to the team over the radio and also to Verstappen. After leaving his damaged car in the gravel and walking back to the pits with the serenity of someone who has learned to live with the unpredictable nature of Formula One, Max Verstappen retreated but did not remain silent. The three-time world champion's reaction was one of the most anticipated at that moment. Everyone wanted to know, would he blame Antonelli? When approached by journalists backstage at the Red Bull Ring, Max was direct but not aggressive. "Nobody does this kind of thing on purpose," he said, referring to the incident with Antonelli. The phrase echoed around the paddock as an elegant defense, but at the same time, it made it clear that he was not happy with the outcome of the day. In his analysis of the collision, Verstappen was clinical. He said that, from his point of view, everything happened very quickly, but that it was possible to see that Antonelli locked the rear wheels when braking, which completely compromised his ability to control the car at the entrance to turn 3. And then, the collision was inevitable. He locked up and couldn't stop. It's that simple. Of course it's frustrating, but it happens. I've been on both sides of this story, he added. The tone was one of frustration, yes, but without resorting to sensationalism. Max seemed aware that, if he wanted to turn it into a public war, he would have enough fuel. But he preferred to defuse the situation. This type of stance, although unexpected by some, shows how much Verstappen has matured in recent years. An interesting detail is that, according to information gathered by reporters from Formula One and Sky Sports, Verstappen made a point of talking to Antonelli in person after the race. The meeting took place backstage at Red Bull Hospitality, and it wasn't exactly a scolding. Max, despite his disappointment, told the young Italian to not let it get him down and learn from it, in a sort of fatherly tug on his ear. For those who know the Dutchman's history, this attitude was a pleasant surprise. In previous seasons, a harsher or more sarcastic reaction would have been expected, but here was a more diplomatic Verstappen, perhaps because he himself had already experienced similar mistakes at the beginning of his career and knows how much this can shape a rookie's psyche. What did you think of this? Leave a comment below. Still, even with all this understanding attitude, it cannot be said that Max took the incident in stride. It is important to remember that Verstappen does not usually leave unresolved issues hanging in the air. He may have been polite now, but he certainly kept this episode in his memory, especially since it involved Antonelli, a name increasingly involved in speculations about the future of Formula One, and, who knows, Red Bull itself. The collision may even have been accidental, but for Max, every detail matters. In the end, the gesture of empathy does not cancel out the sporting impact that the contact caused. Red Bull left Austria with 0 points for Max, while McLaren celebrated. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Verstappen's reaction in this episode was the way he separated the driver's error from the driver's character. At no point did he disrespect Antonelli or question his competence. On the contrary, he made it clear that he understands the process of development of a rookie and that situations like this, however bitter they may be, are part of the maturation of any talent. Verstappen knew that if he overreacted publicly, he could turn a technical incident into a moral drama. He chose the opposite. He showed coolness, self-control, and, above all, a long-term vision. When detailing the incident, Antonelli gave a technical overview that helped to understand why the error happened so early in the race. Before I continue, like and subscribe to the channel so that the YouTube algorithm recommends this video, and let's go. According to him, the rear brake behaved unexpectedly at the end of the straight, approaching turn 3, a classic overtaking spot on the Austrian circuit, but also one of the most treacherous. With the weight difference between the car still full of fuel and the tires cold, braking control was compromised. It was my mistake in regulating the brake pressure. I locked up and lost control of the rear, and when I realized it, I was sliding straight into Max. There was no way to avoid contact, explained Antonelli, with a serious expression. His tone was one of regret, but also of someone who was aware of the gravity of the moment. It was his chance to show professionalism in the face of the mistake, and he knew how to do it. Behind the scenes at Mercedes, the reaction was divided between frustration and protection. Team boss Toto Wolff preferred not to make explosive statements, but he made a point of reinforcing that Antonelli is still learning and that the team is by his side in this process. In fact, within Mercedes, it was already known that 2025 would be a year of ups and downs for Kimi. Although the youngster arrived in Formula One surrounded by expectations, being considered the new Schumacher by many in the Italian press, the German team knew that the transition from F2 to the front platoon would be a tough test. The relationship between Antonelli and Verstappen was also discussed. After the collision and the conversation with the press, the Italian went to the Red Bull hospitality area, the same place where Verstappen had retreated moments before. According to reports from journalists who followed the environment in the pits, the meeting was quick but necessary. Antonelli is said to have apologized personally to Max, reaffirming that the incident was a genuine braking error. And, surprisingly, Verstappen accepted the gesture naturally. There was no coldness, nor visible resentment. For many in the paddock, that brief moment of civility was one of the most memorable of the day. This episode represents a key moment in Kimi Antonelli's learning curve, not only because it was a mistake with significant sporting consequences, but because it marked the first major test of his emotional resilience in Formula One. The way a young driver reacts to a situation like this says a lot about his future. And so far, despite the mistake, Antonelli has been praised for the way he handled the pressure. What could have become a public relations scandal has become an example of professional conduct. And that's no small feat, considering he's only 18 years old and is making his debut with one of the most sought-after teams on the grid. The big question now is, how will Antonelli respond at Silverstone? Because the pressure is only going to increase. The cameras will be on him from the first free practice session. The British fans, passionate about Formula One, are not usually forgiving of mistakes, even more so with the spotlight on a driver who just knocked Verstappen out of the previous race. The official FIA report published after the race stated that car 66 braked too late and lost control whilst attempting to negotiate turn 3, resulting in avoidable contact with car 1. That expression, avoidable contact, is the key to the decision. Although it was clear that there was no bad faith or intentional aggression on Antonelli's part, the entity considered that, given the track conditions and the dynamics of the start, the driver could and should have adjusted his braking point more conservatively. And as a consequence, the penalty came. 3 positions on the starting grid for the next GP, in Silverstone, in addition to 2 penalty points applied to the young Italian's super license. The penalty generated mixed reactions. Part of the paddock, especially on the Red Bull side, considered the decision too lenient. The Austrian team had expected, if not a more severe penalty, at least a drive-through time or a more immediate penalty during the race itself, which could compromise Antonelli's performance there and then. But the stewards argued that, Due to Verstappen's early retirement, there was no way to apply the penalty directly during the race, since Antonelli continued without significant damage. The FIA preferred to wait for the full telemetry data to ensure that the penalty was technical, not emotional. In the international press, coverage of the decision also divided opinions. While Sky Sports called Antonelli's reaction admirable for the honesty with which he admitted his mistake, Sports Courier, in Italy, preferred to highlight the weight of the punishment on the young driver's mental development. In the Dutch press, as expected, the mood was one of revolt. The Telegraph, a newspaper linked to Verstappen's fanbase, classified the punishment as disproportionate to the damage suffered by Max, and even suggested that the FIA should create new criteria for incidents that result in the direct retirement of drivers competing for the title. These opinions, although they do not directly interfere with technical decisions, help shape the public perception of the case and reinforce how Formula One is a game that goes far beyond the tracks. But tell me, what did you think of this video? Comment below because I want to know your opinion, and leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything.